He's seen as the savior of the city's transit system, but can the man at the helm succeed in getting the trains back on the right track? I'm one-on-one with Transit President Andy Byford. He'll talk about his plan to get the system fixed once and for all.
Now, from 42nd and 2nd, this is Pix 11 News Close-Up with Marvin Scott.
Good morning, everyone. This morning's guest has a seemingly impossible mission to rebuild the city's failing transit system. It's been in decline for years. Overcrowded trains, delays, derailments, aging platforms, and inadequate maintenance of tracks. A situation so bad that it prompted Governor Cuomo last year to declare a state of emergency. To fix the mess, well, the state has brought in a knight in shining armor, Andy Byford. He's the president of the MTA transit system. Now, when he was asked by Governor Cuomo if he's up for this, he declared, "I will give it a red-hot go." And he's already begun the Herculean task of turning things around, as he previously succeeded in doing for the Toronto transit system. So good to have you with us.
It's great to be here, Mark.
And I know you took the train. You ride the train every day.
Every day.
So now you've taken on a task. You got 600 miles of track. You got 472 stations, 5.5 million riders a day. Where do you begin to correct the wrongs of a system that's been deteriorating for years?
That's a great question. So, I knew when I came here, you do your due diligence before you take on a job. I knew this would be the toughest job in world transit right now, and certainly 8 months in, it absolutely is. But I'm not starting from scratch. I've got a great team. I've got 50,000 wonderful men and women at Transit, and we were already prosecuting what's called the Subway Action Plan, which was put together after the governor declared the state of emergency, and that's about stabilizing the existing system. So basically arresting this increase in delays, arresting the increase in problems, and improving on-time performance with the existing system. But what's really needed, and we'll come on to it, is to completely move beyond that and to modernize the system, to completely transform it. So we've got a plan to do just that.
So where do you begin? What is your immediate challenge?
Yep. I think it's about getting the basics right. So I have an operational background. I was a station foreman on the Tube. That's how I started. I've been a chief operating officer in Sydney in Australia. I ran the Toronto transit system. So my background is railway operations. What you have to do is obsess about detail. You've got to get the basics right. So that's, for example, I want to see the crews in the right place at the right time every time. We should be safely minimizing dwell times at platforms. In other words, the time the trains spend at platforms to keep the service moving. We need to look at what are the root causes of failures. You know, signals don't just fail. Track circuits and fires failures and fires don't just happen. There's a reason for that. So you've got to keep the place clean. You've got to remove garbage that blocks drains or causes track fires. You've got to make sure the staff are in the right place, getting the trains away. It's a practice that I've adopted elsewhere, an all-out absolute focus on basics.
One of the biggest problems, though, is the delays on a daily basis. 70,000 times a month, if that figure is correct.
It is around 70,000.
And you attribute those delays to the overcrowded conditions.
No, I don't actually. That was one of the controversies when I got here, that there was this amorphous pot just called overcrowding. I don't like that as a delay category, because I don't think that really gets to the root cause. I think overcrowding is a symptom of a greater problem. I mean, undoubtedly, the problem we have is very old infrastructure being used by more people than ever with limited funding. So it's a bit of a trifecta, it's a bit of a triple whammy. But what you really need to do is get to the bottom of, well, why is that overcrowding? Is it because the train service is patchy, there's big gaps in the service? So that's the real cause of the problem. You need to understand, why is it the trains aren't running regularly? Is it because we're not running enough trains in the first place? And that's probably because the signal system just can't do that. So my mantra is get to the root cause of the delay so that you can tackle it and come up with a lasting solution.
Now, you really got started right from the beginning. You came here in January, and then within 100 days, you had an ambitious plan called the Fast Forward Plan.
Correct.
It looks terrific on paper, Mr. Byford, but can it be implemented?
So here's my pitch. 20 years ago, perhaps, I'd say 15 to 20 years ago, the London Underground, which is actually older than the New York subway, it's the oldest in the world, was in a similar state. Chronic breakdowns, unreliable trains, unreliable signalling, squalid stations. You know, there really was a sad state of affairs. But by government committing to funding, adequate funding, sustainable funding, predictable funding that was lockboxed, that couldn't be used for anything else, and with a plan that did the right things, the London Underground now is absolutely transformed. So effectively that's my model, and what we have put together is a plan that in less than 4,000 days, less than 10 years, if this plan gets funded, we can have about 90% of the subway system completely re-signaled. So modern signalling, enabling you to run more trains closer together, enabling you to completely transform the reliability of the system. So 5 million riders out of that 5.7 million within 10 years can be on modern signalling. Within just 5 years, if we target where we put elevators scientifically and we install another 36, you can be no more than 2 stops away from an accessible station, which is a massive leap forward from where we currently are. Within 5 years, we will completely rebuild and modernize 150 stations. In the following 5 years, we'll do another 150. This is an unprecedented plan, including introduction of a new way to pay so that you don't have to use a Metro card. Unprecedented plan to fast track us to a world-class transit system.
Now, the first phase will be 5 years. Is there a start date? Has it begun?
So effectively, it has already begun, and I certainly wouldn't want New Yorkers to think you have to wait 5 years. There's things that can and should be done and are being done right now. So again, it's back to that focus on basics. I actually think there's things that can be done and should be done that don't actually cost any money. They just need better management and better management focus and attention. Things like cleanliness, things like provision of information, things like running of our buses and trains on time. A lot of it can be improved right now without the substantial investment. So we're already delivering improvements on those fronts, and the Subway Action Plan to date has cut overall delays by around 11%. We've increased the response time to incidents. We've got better at how long it takes to fix incidents. There's loads more to do, but the first job is to make things better, and I want to see improvement by the end of this year.
You hit one word, very important, the investment, the cost factor.
Yeah.
I'm going to take a break. When we come back, where is that money coming from to achieve your
question.
goal? We'll be right back with the president of the MTA Transit System, Andy Byford. Stay with us. Back now with Andy Byford, the president of the MTA Transit System. He's got a daunting challenge and task ahead of him. It is a really ambitious plan. And you talk in that plan includes over the next 5 years, you want to add 650 new cars, 3,000 more in the next 5 years, more than 50 new stations with access elevators, and a redesigned bus routes, a new fare payment system, really robust.
It's a big shopping list.
It costs money to make all that happen.
It does.
So where's it coming from?
That will be a mixture of city and state funding. I think it needs to look at new sources of funding, potentially congestion charging, maybe a millionaire's tax, bonding, private influx of money by PPPs. I think it's not as simple as just one funding source. But what I am saying to the politicians on now a big roadshow that I'm doing over the next year, a big lobbying push, and if it takes 300 town halls, I'll do it. I'm going out selling this plan with my team, and one of the messages I'm saying, it is big money, but the cost of not doing it is even higher. If we don't act now, the system will get older, the infrastructure will get older, the pressure on it will grow as the city's population and the ridership grows, and the task won't go away. The need will still be there, so it will get more expensive. So we've got to act now. So I'm pushing for around about $40 billion over 10 years. We're going to finalise the actual total over the next couple of months. But around about that, big money to you and me, But in the grand scheme of things, if you divided the 10-year plan in 10, that's around $4 billion extra a year between these myriad sources.
Pocket change.
But think of what it will do, though. It will keep New York at the forefront of being the economic leader of the world, the financial capital of the world. It'll transform New Yorkers' lives. It'll keep the city moving. The cost of not doing it is steady, relentless decline. We have to act now. And so my job now, having got the plan written, is to convince politicians, stakeholder groups, advocacy groups that this, if nothing else, if you don't invest in anything else, surely this is the one thing that will be transformative to New York. And only yesterday I was at a forum with hoteliers and retailers, and they are right behind this plan, as is pretty much everyone else.
So you got $8.5 billion from the state, $2.5 billion from the city. The mayor wants it to be equal between state and city. So there goes the political end of this thing. Now, what assurances do you have that that money will be here, considering in past years mayors have diverted transit funds to other sources?
Well, I think what we need to do, and I have had discussions with a number of senior politicians, is I think we owe it to New Yorkers to say, if you will, via your taxes, if you will invest in this plan, because ultimately it's in your interest, we will give you a state-of-the-art transit system in a record time, an unprecedented time frame. I think it's not unreasonable to say that it should be lockboxed. Ring-fenced is the expression I would use as a Brit. I would say
there was a lockbox which the governor wanted, but vetoed. Well,
it should be lockboxed so that we
wanted.
say, and this is how it worked in London, even though at the time the UK economy was in dire straits, the UK invested money, London government invested money in the tube that could not be diverted for anything else. And look at what the transformation is. There are lines in London now that are running 36 trains per hour with automatic signalling, what's called communications-based train control. So the trains move very safely, closely together. We're lucky if we do 25 trains per hour. Our plan will deliver that kind of uplift.
They did try to have a lockbox here in New York. The legislature passed it, the governor vetoed it, and the mayors diverted those funds elsewhere when it should have been going to transit.
So, well, look, at the end of the day, I'm going to leave the politics to the politicians. What my job is, on behalf of New Yorkers, my 8 million riders a day across bus and subway, is to pitch this plan, to convince people of this plan. I won't get the money for this plan just by having a begging bowl. You've got to make the case. So I intend to bring in economists to help me make the link, the business case, if you like, between the financial benefits to the city and the return on investment, to make it a compelling, irresistible case.
Congestion pricing versus a millionaire's tax. The mayor wants the millionaire's tax, and the governor congestion pricing. What do you think would work best?
Well, again, I think we need to look at all options. I don't think there's a panacea here. I don't think it's as simple as saying it's all tax or it's all one source or another. I think it needs to be a variety of sources. I lived in London when the congestion charge came in. A lot of people thought it would be a failure. A well-run congestion charge actually does two things. Congestion is reduced, which is good. It keeps the buses moving because not everyone wants to pay the fee. But equally, enough people pay the congestion charge that the money thereby raised gets put directly into transit. So I think it's definitely worth pursuing. It's worth having a look at. But again, I make the point that the money that we're talking about needs to come from myriad sources.
And the congestion pricing has worked very well
it has
in London.
Worked well. I mean, over time, the congestion has begun to rise again, but the money still pours in, and the bus network has been a major beneficiary of that.
Let me go back to the current situation. There are a lot of people out there complaining. The number one train in this brutal heat wave we have, no air conditioning in the number one train. They're older trains. On
some. I mean, I rode it yesterday. It was a mixture, actually. I deliberately used the one. Some trains, some cars, every carriage was working, but absolutely, I found two that weren't. I immediately reported them.
Okay. People are complaining, and the commuters, we went down underground and we asked a couple of commuters for some, what they would ask you. And here's one commuter who has this question for you.
When do they expect to have the subway system, the stations renovated with the lines working and the signals working?
Well, that's what Fast Forward's all about. And again, though, that doesn't mean to say you have to wait 5 years. We're already engaged in station upgrades. We're already putting in elevators. We've got $1 billion program to put in elevators. We're already working on cleanliness. We're just finishing off the re-signaling of the 7 line, the Flushing line. That will be completed by the end of this year. So a lot of work is already happening. But if we're serious about this and we want to expedite and accelerate to a completely renovated system, that's where I need the money for Fast Forward.
Well, also you have 472 stations, and some of them are very old, and evidenced by what happened just a couple of months ago at the Borough Hall station in Brooklyn, where you had a part of the ceiling collapsing. Fortunately, only one person was slightly injured. What is your approach to station rehabilitation?
It is as described in the Fast Forward plan. We are dealing with stations that have been left basically unloved for decades. So we're dealing with a massive backlog of infrastructure investment, and Fast Forward will see 150 stations comprehensively be renewed, renovated in the first 5 years. We're not talking about cosmetics. We're talking about fundamental peeling back the platforms, rebuilding these stations so that they're fit for another 50, 100 years. But while we're at it, we'll make them look nicer too. But I'm just about to roll out, later this month, we'll be rolling out a new station management model that will see single point accountability at every station for groups of stations, group station managers, a job I used to do, and that will include a much greater focus on station cleanliness and basic maintenance.
Okay, I want to take a break. When we come back, I want to talk about the buses. You're redesigning bus routes, particularly the Staten Island and Manhattan bus route, which has been in operation now for a couple of weeks.
It has.
We'll check on that when we come back. Stay with us. Back now with Andy Byford, the president of the New York MTA transit system, with a daunting challenge ahead of you, and you're already 8 months into it, and your Fast Forward plan you're beginning to implement. But there are still the problems out there. We asked some folks on the ground if they had a question for you, and we found this one harried commuter who has this question.
Okay.
Why are the buses dirty? Why are the buses dirty? And also the trains.
So why?
Well, it's an ongoing challenge, and I think New Yorkers can do their bit. Please use garbage bins, but absolutely we're upping our game on cleanliness. On the subway, we're reorganizing the way we run stations so that there is absolute accountability at local level to keep stations clean and to do deep cleans of stations and to address long-standing deficiencies. And on the buses, again, we're upping our game on what I call turnaround clean. So it is an ongoing challenge. I think it's all relative. I had friends in from Australia the other day who said that they thought the trains were pretty clean. This was the 7 line going out to Flushing. But I'm an obsessive about detail. I pick up garbage if I see it. I can't walk past mediocrity. I probably get in trouble with the union for that, but to me it's part of being a team player and setting a good example. But also I walk about, and I want my managers to do the same. I take pictures of things that are deficient and we immediately action them. So something that's dirty or scruffy, I don't want to see it. It needs to be sorted out.
And you ride the subways every day, and you wear your name badge, and you talk to the...
I talk to customers, and increasingly, because of the nature of the job, you get recognised, and I like interacting with the customers. But not just the subways, buses as well. You mustn't forget 2.3 million riders a day use the buses. That is equally important to me, and that too needs attention.
Now, while you're dealing with all of this and looking to the future, right now you've got to look at something that's going to be happening in a few months. Next April, the L train to Manhattan gets shut down. Already problems in parts of Brooklyn, Williamsburg, rents going down, people leaving because they don't know how they're going to get into the city. Greg Mocker has more on that right now. Let's take a look.
There goes the L train. A section will shut down in April 2019 from Manhattan into Brooklyn at the Bedford Avenue stop. The Brooklyn section will be running on the other end of the line from Canarsie Rockaway Parkway into Williamsburg. But those riders are packing the auditorium at Canarsie Ascend Charter School on Flatlands Avenue, checking detours, asking about alternatives. What if you got a 2 or 3 train that to bring you into Brooklyn, to ride all the way out here?
Okay, but here's the thing. Okay, I'm already getting up at 4:45 now.
I probably take the express bus because I work in Midtown, and the A train and the J train and the Z train is already crowded.
It's the subway that will really be the savior here, because the subway will take around 70% of displaced customers.
70% of displaced. What about the others?
I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I can't say I'm really looking forward to it. It is going to be the biggest logistical challenge that the MTA has faced, certainly since Superstorm Sandy, which was, of course, the root of this problem. The Superstorm Sandy completely devastated the tunnel that goes under the East River that the line uses.
There's no way this can be put off any longer.
And I think most people get that. It's still safe for now, but if we don't act, that tunnel will slowly degrade to the point that we'd end up having to shut it. So you'd end up with the same situation. The reason being that the tunnel was completely inundated, not just with water, but with salt water. So it's corrosing, it's progressively corroding, eating away at what the critical infrastructure within the tunnel. So I think most people get the need to do it. We looked at alternatives. The best way to deal with it is shut the tunnel and to provide an excellent transit plan around it. That will be around 70% of people we model and we need to use alternate subway routes. We're lucky, we have a lot of options. And the remaining 30% will be split between a very high intensity bus operation across the Williamsburg Bridge, around 80 buses an hour. That's launching a bus more than one a minute. A special ferry service across the East River, cycling, walking. We're putting together a comprehensive plan with the DOT.
Can this be done in less time than 15 months is what's
that's
projected
certainly
right now?
That's certainly our aim, Marvin. We've got a good contractor on board, and they are incentivized to do it earlier. I believe they can. We'll be certainly pushing to deliver it in less than 15 months. But it's a bit of carrot and stick. By the same token, they will be heavily penalised by the day if they bring it in late. This thing's got to be done. My job is with my team to bring this thing in on time, on budget, preferably early.
Now, we've been talking about the subways predominantly here, but let's shift our focus. The buses, because that's part of your overall fast forward plan of redesigning the bus routes. You've already had one in effect from Staten Island to Manhattan, and how's that been running?
Okay, so I'm glad you mentioned buses, because a lot of people talk to me about the subway. My bus customers are equally important to me. There's 2.3 million a day use the biggest bus network in North America. So one of the challenges is bus ridership has been on a relentless decline over recent years. People have not been using the buses, so we need to arrest that decline. We need to understand what it is they don't like about the bus network, and I think it's primarily two things. One, the buses are hopelessly caught in traffic, so we need to tackle congestion. We need more bus lanes, and we need bus lanes to be properly enforced, so we're taking action on all of that. But two, a lot of the bus routes haven't been re-looked at for decades, 30, 40 years, so they go on these circuitous routes that people find annoying. So Staten Island, it used to take, an express bus would take 27 stops just to get off the island. We've redesigned that network to go where people want it. It's a blank sheet of paper. We listen to customers, we listen to bus operators, we listen to politicians, and we've redesigned it. And so far, I'd say broadly so good. People have given us feedback. We've made tweaks. They said they wanted some buses back on Fifth Avenue. We've done that. Big shout out for Borough President Jimmy Otto. He's been fantastic in supporting us. We're now turning our attention to the Bronx.
Bronx is next, and then...
Yep. And then the other boroughs after that.
Each borough.
And so what we aim to do with Fast Forward, we have committed to redesigning the whole bus network, that's 320 plus routes, in 3 years.
Now, one of the other changes you're talking about is, right now we're all familiar with the Metro card, but you're going to change the fare paying system. What are you going to do? How's that going to change?
Sure. So the Metro card served us well. People are used to the magnetic swipes, but at the end of the day, that is old technology. Most transit systems now use what is called a smart card or open payment system, where either you use a dedicated card, or you can use your credit card, or you can use your phone, which is preloaded. You just tap on a reader and you're good to go. That has a lot of benefits. It speeds up the boarding processes on buses and in subways.
Talking about fares, will there be a fare increase next year?
Well, that's a matter for the board. That has not yet been decided. At the end of the day, the MTA's costs increase, but we recognise that fare rises are never never popular. But at the end of the day, if people want improvements, that does come at a cost. So that debate needs to happen at the board.
Most enlightening, and thank you so much for coming on. I want to end with a quote. In a New Yorker article, you were quoted as saying, "Over the next 12 months, I'm going to make this irresistible and unstoppable." You face a daunting challenge, and we wish you well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy Byford.
Thank you.
And that'll do it for our program for this week. If you have any comments or wish to see this broadcast again, log on to our website, pix11.com/newscloseup. I'm Marvin Scott. Thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, everyone.